There are two main mistakes that we African people and African nations are doing that the West does not want us to fix. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our channel. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. And if you've been here before and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. It's the only way to support me and this YouTube channel, and also give me courage to sit in front of this camera and talk to you about our African nations. Now, mistake number one is that we African nations and African people, we depend too much on the US dollar. How is this a mistake, you might ask? This is because the IMF, the World Bank, and the US dollar systems, they were not set to benefit us as African nations or us as developing world. They are there to exploit us, and they are there to keep us poor so that they can keep exploiting us. And how are they doing this exploitation, you might ask? Here is how. Every time African nations borrow money, we always borrow money against the US dollar. So we borrow money against the US dollar, we get high interest rates. And on top of that, those loans are given with conditions. Most of the time is we have to do something to be able to get those loans. We have to give them something to get those loans. And this is a problem because we also need to earn US dollars to pay out those loans. And somehow we never quite finish paying those loans because of the interest rates, high interest rates, and those conditions that are put in place. Another problem that comes out of this is that we will concentrate or put most of our resources towards earning the dollar and forgetting developing our nations, or forget our own people and their well-being. What do I mean by this? Let's take an example of Kenya, my country, Kenya. We produce too much coffee, a lot of coffee. We produce a lot of tea, like no one's business. But somehow, we don't have enough grain to feed our own people. Somehow, Kenya does not have enough grain to feed her people. We depend on the West. We buy grain from United States, Ukraine, Mexico. But we have too much tea, a lot of coffee. And we have enough land that we can plant, we can do farming and plant our own grains to feed our own people. But that is not happening really. It's because of the system. We focus on earning the dollar to pay our debts. And on top of that, whilst we are producing too much tea and a lot of coffee, the price, because it's in the US dollars, we sell at a cheaper price. We do not get the value of those cash crops. So we don't make enough profit to pay off the debts we have in US dollars. This is a big problem because now, when the US or the EU comes up with demands on us, the demands that we as African people are not willing to do, they will always put sanctions on us. They will always put sanctions on the grain and other stuff that we depend on them until we submit to their demands. Now that to me is not being free. That is not being financial independent. So we need a system to be put in place that will cater for us as African people and African nations, so we don't have to fall into these traps and being hostage to the West and falling into their demands. That is the problem number one. And the only way to fix that is by we African nations coming up with one currency, one central bank that will supply our projects debt that we know we will be able to pay off those debts. And we will know that when we are selling our services, we are getting them at the right price. That is one step towards being financially independent. The second mistake that the first mistake depends on to work is to be able to be financially independent. We African people must somehow be united, because we will not have one central bank or one currency if we are not united. And we have seen this. The West does not want to hear anything about African unity. It pisses them off, because they know once we unite is the first step towards our being financially independent and stop depending on their US dollars. And once we unite, we will be able to take control on who we trade with, what comes and goes out of our African nations. And we will be able to stand in our own 2 feet and be able to compete with the rest of the world. Because right now we are not competing. Right now we are playing catch up. How can we compete with somebody who sets conditions? We can't. It's not a fair competition. To be able to have a fair competition, we have to have African unity, the first step, which will lead to us having our own currency and our own central banks. We will be able to borrow our own money that are pegged against our resources or against our services, get the right price for our services. And that's the only way that I think we will be able to be financially independent of the West. And we can be able to compete fairly with the West. That's it for this video. Please, thank you for coming back. And if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. And if there's another platform or another person somewhere who provides you with value information, consider too supporting them in any way they need. But the only way to support me and this channel is by subscribing, commenting on the comment section. I would like to know your thoughts on this matter. And until next time, take care.